from right now instead of the nonsense we just put with through.
Yeah, so it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Um, cool, man.
Anyway, it's nice to see you finally. People don't realize this, but all of our interactions are non-video, and not only that, all our interactions with like other teams are also non-video. So we'll be in like a marketing meeting, and they'll be like all the marketing people with all their video on, and none of the Lamden people with their video on.
Yeah,
Video on.
that's true.
It's awkward, but I'm not exactly sure why we do that. But we're all just like, nah,
Oh,
audio only.
I do it because I don't like being on camera for people. No, I mean I know you, but like for random marketing people, I don't like being on camera because I don't want them to see my facial expressions. Like they're trying to sell me something, so I don't want to like give anything away. So I just like turn it off.
Fair enough, like a big poker move.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but for you, I mean, we hung out in real life that one
Right.
time. So, I
That's
mean, that counts.
Um, let's thank you everyone for joining. Of 19 people, that's maybe a record for us. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
Close. It's been a while. I think people are under the impression there's going to be some major news drops tonight. I didn't allude to anything, and I don't know what major news is exactly, but we're going to talk about some things, just what's been going on, what's happening, and answer some questions. And I feel like it's been ages since we've done this, so I'm happy that we're finally getting to do it. And I got a torrent of questions. So a lot of them were actually the same theme, so I compiled them down. And we'll just start, I suppose. I guess with maybe like a business update, Stu.
Yeah.
Specifically, something around what is our business strategy around like mainnet?
Yeah, sure.
How do we see Lamden operating kind of like after mainnet?
Yeah, so I mean, I can dive right in. I think this is a fine way to seg right into the US compliant thing because basically, throughout this entire process, we've been working with like the way that regulation seems to work, at least worldwide and with crypto in general, is that no one knows what's going on, and then rules emerge. And as those rules emerge, it can change kind of the pathway of a business, especially if you're in like a super unregulated environment. And you saw that with a lot of like exchanges. Like a lot of exchanges didn't have to do KYC, and then there's a big push to do KYC, and then all of a sudden their businesses changed. Like a lot of, I think Bittrex had to do an international version and a US version to segregate the different markets. So I feel like a lot of crypto projects are kind of in that where they've been forced to make some decisions uh, as to what they do. And one of those things is that like we never really want to talk about, oh, what's the marketing strategy, what's the business strategy, what's all of that, because we've always been really weary of what this crypto thing is being seen as, because we don't make the rules, unfortunately. So what we decided is that maybe we shouldn't try to fight things. Maybe we should try to work within the frameworks we have. So what we've decided is that we'll release the mainnet as is with everything, and to the regulators, that can be an international version, and it's not something that would be marketed in the U.S. at all. It'd be completely isolated. And what that does is that gives us a lot of freedom to then work in other jurisdictions, which are a little nicer, let's say. And to compensate for that, we would create a US version, and that would be essentially kind of a cleaned, and when I say cleaned, I mean like all the things that we know regulators don't like about crypto are removed. So then we can have a full US marketing campaign. We can actually do full business operations to the fullest extent. And we're not like tiptoeing around this thing that a lot of other crypto companies are, right? Like everyone, all these crypto companies are just pretending to be something and then doing another thing. And it just makes actually working really difficult. And so if we didn't have to do that, we wouldn't have to necessarily kind of be this weird amorphous thing where everyone's like, well, what are you doing? Well, it's because nothing's very clear right now. So those are our plans after Maine. Is that the actual blockchain that we've created with all of the governance and everything like that? That's like the purest tech, and that's where all the innovation is going to be, and that's where all of the really cool governance and all of the cool features that we have are, and that's great, right? So that's our expression of technology. And then everyone says, oh, well, at least the original model was, oh, if you have a crypto project, you have to go and get adoption. Yes, that is true. So how do you get adoption, though, when a lot of companies potentially see your technology as a risk because of how the regulatory landscape? Well, if you can introduce it to them in sort of a vanilla, slimmed down version in the US platform, hopefully a lot of that energy then can be piped into this international version. And that's what we're hoping, is that we get them started and we introduce them to this US version, which is, like I said, there's not a floating credit. It's more like an AWS credit that you purchase and you can make transactions on. It doesn't have governance. It's completely centralized. It has the ability for us, like if the government says, oh, you need to do a DCMA takedown, okay, fine. In the US version, that's fine. But then as people start to look at the technology and like the technology and they say, oh, I'm starting to understand what this crypto thing is about, then there's this international version which has all those things that it's like the next generation. Now that you understand what blockchain is and how it's useful, check out this other suite. And that's how I think I see things going forward. So we kind of get best of both worlds, right? We can kind of play within a playground that is healthy and nice for the regulators, and then we can also still have this experimental, I guess, sort of like super cutting edge blockchain technology that has all the things that we really, really like.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel, but it was starting to get really frustrating for a long time, and I had been dealing with this stuff for a while and not really understanding it, and then I got to talk to some of the lawyers, and those conversations just shed a light on like this. This is more nefarious, I think, than I even thought it was. I mean, there's got to be some way we can gray area or be smart about this or that. And like, when you talk to the lawyers, they can sniff that stuff out a mile away.
Yeah.
Like anytime you're trying to do this or that, it's going to be a security, and they're not stupid. And when it comes down to it, like, we kind of want to be legit, right? We don't want to do anything nefarious. And
no, I know, and that's the problem, right? Is that we don't want to be nefarious. And what I think is interesting is when we were talking to our lawyer, he said like, oh, in the legal community, Ripple is a security. The only reason why they haven't been deemed as one is because their legal counsel used to be the head of the SEC or something, right? And so it's this game that I think everyone who isn't actually there kind of makes speculations, and that's where I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's a utility token. There's no such thing as a utility token, right? There's no legal guidance that says utility tokens equals this, and that's okay. That's just what people think. And so it causes a lot of projects.
There's no guidelines, and what really made it click for me, there's no guidelines on what is decentralization. There's just our lawyer gave us some quotes from a speech the chairman gave, and that was as best as we could get.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, well, if you follow those to a T, you're never going to achieve that.
Right.
And they're not going to lay it out for you because they don't actually, I don't think, why I say it's a little bit nefarious, I don't think that they want there to be a decentralized environment. I don't think they like those environments very well. So they don't want to give you the step-by-step on how to create one. And,
yeah. So. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
But we're gonna say something else.
Just that once we realized that we could have whatever we wanted, by doing the two chain thing. We could do everything we wanted to with this chain, like the Lamden chain, and what we promised. Um, was a huge relief, I think, for the whole team.
Yeah.
Just everyone, well, this makes a lot more sense. We don't have to try to like shoehorn in this or that or skirt this issue, but we can just do it. And that was a good day actually.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. It's like all these things that we're like, man, we got to figure out a clever way to do this because we can't really do it. All those problems are gone, and
Yeah,
we just kind of have to, like you said. I agree with you. I don't think that for when it comes to U.S. jurisdiction, they want another Ethereum situation. They basically have just said that one got through. Be be glad that one slipped through the cracks, and that's unfortunately what it is. We're not coming and saying something that isn't true. So how do we work with that? And the best way, I think, is that if you isolate it initially until you have that proper decentralization, and then try to approach it again.
exactly. Yeah. Um, and the U.S. offering, I'm pretty excited about because it'll give us a chance to really get developers interested in the platform and using it. It's not vastly different um, in the way that the technology works. It's exactly the same technology, um, but we can get because we are handcuffs are off a little bit as far as the SEC is concerned. We're out of their purview. We can get developers into the platform at a more bare metal level. We can
Yeah,
just be like, here's some credits, go ahead, and we don't have to like try to like point them to exchanges and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But if they want that complete decentralized experience for their users and everything, then we can be like, yeah, you can go ahead and use that though if you really want to.
yeah,
But that it also brings in a revenue stream hopefully for Lamden, and we can continue development on obviously the blockchain.
yeah.
Which did you want to talk about Runway?
Sure, sure. Let's talk about Runway.
Sure.
Um, any specifics about that, or
Um, People are interested in do we still have a lot of runway? People were concerned we're hiring Russian devs so that we must mean we don't have a lot of money left.
No, that's not what that means. What that means is that I think that the culture of Silicon Valley is like totally overheated, where we're not getting our money's worth, and so I would rather not waste money. That's what that means. We're able to accomplish exactly what we need to with cheaper resources. So why spend that money, right? Um, that is what it is. In terms of like, if people are worried about the longevity of the company, I would say that that's not something to worry about. We have a very long time to go. We're one of the first. Well, I don't know if we're one of the first companies, but there were a lot of companies that were unable to get out of the crypto market in time, and so they took a big beating, and we didn't. And just because of the sheer velocity of what happened in 2017 and how much money was raised, we were able to manage it pretty well. So we're doing fine, and we don't have any issues hitting everything that we need to hit, right? If that's the worry, that everything is good and dandy, and then out of the blue, like, oh, we've run out of runway, that's not something that's going to happen. Otherwise, it would be much more apparent in kind of our approaches and our operations and things like that, right? Like, we wouldn't be taking as much time as we are to make sure that everything's combed over and like cleaned out if at like in 2 weeks it was like, oh, there's no more runway. We're doing this because we have the luxury to, which is, it's good and bad, right? But yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, let's talk about team tokens.
Sure.
What's the story on team tokens?
So yeah, that's kind of fun, I guess, in terms of that only two employees ever hit the vesting cliff, and only one did completely. And so one employee was completely vested, and then one employee was partially vested. and then no other employee hit their vesting cliff. So that's where we're at. Like most of the tokens have been distributed, and so it is what it is.
Fair enough. We had some fun calls with a brand strategist.
Yeah.
Can't talk. And we went through some fun exercises. I don't know how many people get to go through these type of exercises, but it was my first. It feels sometimes a lot like you're in kindergarten, maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but it's a lot of like, mind exercises and stuff like that. But at the end of it, we got some good stuff out of it, I think. Right?
Yeah.
We're pretty happy with like our mission statement, and I can't quite remember. It was like months ago, but like there was a couple other things we got out of that, and I was hoping you could share them.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'm doing a screen recording, so I don't know if you guys will see this afterwards, I guess. I think, hold on, I can also share my screen. Give me 1 second. Come here. Okay. Present a window. Yeah, so as Jeff said, this is one of the documents. It's not all of them. We got like a few other ones, but we kind of went through this brand strategy of identifying who we are, what we're selling to, blah, blah, blah. You can see this. And breaking it into a lot of the aspirational things that we do. So the lady we worked with was getting us to answer a lot of these questions, and then she would interview us and come up with a copy like this. And we might be able to make this public, but I'm gonna piece through this because this might not be the right guide. Okay, so user personas, right? I don't think this is the right one. Hold on. No. This is not the right one. Okay, well, I guess that's kind of it, right? Intuitive blockchain framework, empowering developers to code with confidence. I like that. But there's another one. Is this it? Just open the same thing again, didn't I? Okay, I'm not going to get into it. I'll try to make it public so people can look at it.
Okay.
But basically, the moral of the story is that we went through it and we came up with like what Lamden is, how it should be positioned, what the aspirational goals are, and we wanted to focus on this concept of empowering people to write smart contracts so then they could generate revenue from that, right? So if they wrote a smart contract, they only would have to deploy it once, and then they could actually earn something on it, and they could take advantage of those network effects. So if they built something and they went out and they got a whole bunch of users, suddenly they have, I don't know, they have like something that's almost like a business unit coming in, right? And if we can start teaching people how to write contracts like that, then I think it's really powerful. And that's one of the things that the US version pretty much only does, right? Is that you can purchase compute credits, and then that can be used to either transact on current existing smart contracts or to deploy your own. And then the only reward mechanism is that if a developer gets other people to transact upon their smart contract, they get like 10% of the transaction fees. And so we can actually pay them out in cash. And that's one of the nice things about the US version. That is pretty similar to the reward structure of the actual international version. And so it's pretty much inspired by that. But the international version would be, you're getting rewarded in a cryptocurrency rather than just a payout. But it structures, I think, blockchain in a way that's like, what's the point, right? Like a lot of people get really hyped up about Ethereum or something like that, but they don't really know like what the point is. And if we have a point for it and people suddenly realize, like, oh, this is cool technology that I want to interact with, but at the end of the day, what's the point? If we're I think we're the only ones saying this is the point. Um, it becomes really cool. It becomes like something that even if you're not into blockchain or even if you're not really a developer, you want to kind of get a part of because you could benefit from it.
Yeah, I think that Ethereum is proving that right now. They're proving out like an ecosystem, right, that developers can take advantage of to make money. But the problem with Ethereum is it's almost impossible as a developer to figure it out. And I'm not trying to be like uh, you know you can't figure it out or it's impossible to figure it out or what. But I talked to a guy just recently through someone from the community who was just trying to make a token for his buddy and he couldn't figure it out to save his life. So he came to us and said like, hey, what do you guys have? And unfortunately, we weren't at the position to have tutorials or guides or anything to provide him, but I had a couple of conversations with him. And that's the general idea is there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas and a lot of people that like the ownership aspect of blockchain, but they don't want to have to worry about this Ethereum nonsense that goes on. And if you get Ethereum and you use it right now, you don't think you quite appreciate how much work has been put in to make that easy for you, as easy as it is, and it's still quite still has many layers to it, right? But there's a lot of crazy technological stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you're not really aware of, and it's hard. Like it's rough. It's rough stuff. So anyway, we would love for the developers to get in right at creating the thing that they wanted to create. And I've now used our system for 2 months. I know I created some nice tutorials. I hope you've done them all. And I tell you, it's a dream to develop for. And I've done Ethereum stuff, and I really could just start creating my idea, and it was nice. It was nice to see all that being realized. Yeah, so that's kind of the brand strategy. Is we're making something people can use actually, and to make their idea to realize their ideas. Yeah, it's fun. That shit's fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to give it to people to see what they make, and then if they like it and they start making stuff, then the more stuff they make and the easier it is for people to make things, the more Lamden benefits, because the barrier for people to create something goes from like if I was to make something in Ethereum, it might take me 4 days, but the same thing might take me a few hours in Lamden. And it's not really because of anything else, but we've just decided to use Python, which is a very structurally different language. And it's built for exactly what we're kind of trying to do, which is fleshing out your ideas. I mean, that means that we're going to be moving faster on creating applications. And a lot of these things like OpenSea or that protocol that runs OpenSea and things like that are kind of touted as these extremely complicated Ethereum pieces of software are not actually technically that difficult if you look at the logic of them. So what that means is that we're going to be able to compete, and hopefully we can outpace a lot of these other blockchains, because it's going to be just so fast to develop them, and that's the goal. And I'm glad that Jeff has seen it well. Yeah, makes me happy.
Yeah, I think we really can do it. Ethereum people send me Ethereum stuff all the time, and you guys are fantastic, and send me whatever you want, obviously. But and they say, why don't we do this, or why can't we do this, or that? And it's like we can do all that stuff and a lot simpler and a lot easier. It's just not really going to look like that Ethereum thing that you've been staring at. Like, it'll be different, and it might be a different system, and the market might be different, and all that kind of stuff will be different. but we're not just gonna like join OpenSea tomorrow, right? Because we're not Ethereum. We don't have any of that stuff. It's a little bit more complicated than, we can just glom onto whatever that is, right? We definitely want to do all that stuff, like for sure. I definitely want to do a ton of NFT stuff and games and all that stuff, but we can't just glom onto whatever Ethereum has right now. We have to do our own thing, and that's better. I promise you that's better, because it'll be easier. The guy that wanted to create that token, he could probably have just created that token, right? Instead of having to fart around with it. So be patient with us, I guess. But let's talk about games too.
Sure.
Lamden World.
Yeah.
We MVP out. I played it for a bunch. I got my ass handed to me. But whatever. My son played it. My son really liked it.
Really?
He cried a lot.
He cried a lot?
Yeah.
Why
He thought he was goofing around, then he took over someone's land and they came after him. I've never heard him scream so loud. People don't know you, man. So yeah. But what's the plan with it going forward? I mean,
yeah.
Nathan produced the MVP.
Yes.
Did a great job. We have the code.
Yes.
It is not backed by a smart contract, obviously, because we don't have the mainnet out yet. But when do you think we'll get around to getting that out?
Yeah, so Lamden World was always to be sort of like, we wanted to make something that showcased sort of an application that couldn't be done on Ethereum because of the latency and our speed. So we wanted to showcase something that when people are playing it, they wouldn't be able to believe that you could do it on blockchain because, crypto people couldn't believe it because they've used Ethereum games before and they know that they're slow. So we designed Lamden World. We had it out for a little bit. Jeff and I took a lot of time into balancing it so that it could stand as an actual game that was fun, so that not only was it sort of this demo piece, but it could even stand up as an independent work, so that you could just play it if you wanted to play it, or you could use it as a point of reference to kind of think about what you wanted to make. And I think that's probably the most fleshed out example game that we're gonna do. It's it was a lot of stuff, a lot of components, and I hope it was worth it. I think it will be worth it. But really, the last thing to do is to switch a lot of the PHP logic into a smart contract, and that's about it.
Yeah. What the developer gave us was all the reads and writes to the database. He mapped them all out so they can be mapped to a smart contract. So
yeah,
it's just that piece that needs to be done to plug it into the Lamden blockchain. Other than that, I mean, there's probably some fun stuff we can do with it if we have time, right?
Yeah.
So that brings me more to my next thing I want to talk about is, we kind of want to provide the tools, and we're just kind of excited to see what other people want to make with them. Ethereum doesn't really make Ethereum things. They just kind of give you the tool set to do it. I don't want to harp on Ethereum very much, but I apparently am. And that's why we created this Lamden Games room where people can create specs. And honestly, I know people have a lot of ideas, and people wrote some specs. It dropped off a little bit, but I just want to encourage people to go back in there, read the specs, and finish them. Try to flesh them out. I went in there and added some comments. If I get some back and forth with people, I'll definitely put in more time to help you flesh it out. Don't be so concerned about the technical aspect of it. I'll tell you what can and can't be done with a smart contract, but let me tell you that. Use your imagination. And I'd rather it work like that and have you at the end of the day own something and have something and run something than it just be something we're trying to push on people and get them to play, right? So we'd rather put our technical expertise in Lamden at your hands and make your dream come true, or make you realize your thing, right? Me and Crypto Stu are working on something that seems really cool. He's got almost like a trading card type of thing going on where you can mint a kingdom, and your kingdom has attributes, and you can battle other kingdoms and upgrade. And he created a really great spec. It's not in that room. I don't know. I think he's keeping it close to his vest, but I'm helping him with that one a little bit. So we're working on it. And you know what? I can't wait to see it. You know, he's really put a lot of thought and effort into it, and I'm happy to go back and forth with him and provide any details to it. And I'm happy to write the smart contract for it. So you know, if anyone has that kind of drive and wants to see something happen, we'll help you. We will. So
Yeah, and something to add. Sorry, what?
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that that's kind of the goal, right? Like for me, programming's super fun because you can like have an idea and then build it, right? And anything that kind of gets in the way of that is seen as like a barrier. So the easier it is for someone to do, the better. And when Jeff says, "Don't worry about how you program," that's totally right because our optimal system is one where you don't have to worry about it, and you just have an idea, you have a creative thought, and then it gets fleshed out. And we can probably help you program it, and this is kind of where that Lamden Labs comes into play. Um, it might just be technical prowess that we give you, and you might just want something as simple as I want to make a dice game, right? Anything like that is good for us, and we'll help you because one, we get a game on Lamden. Two, you have something that you can go and promote yourself, and then three, we kind of learn what else should the system be. Like, obviously, it's the first version. We did a good job, I think, or we tried to do a good job at hitting all the nails on the head as to like, okay, well, how's the usability and stuff like that. But if we didn't, we should know, right? And it's funny because I even feel like I'm too deep into it that I've almost like had to rely on Jeff and be like, Jeff, what's wrong with it? Am I too like in the weeds now? And talking with him and trying to understand because the more that we can kind of separate ourselves from like this tech elitist concept, like, oh, you have to be this amazing developer and you have to use this like crazy language, then the more people we can bring in and get excited about this stuff.
Yeah, you actually did something cool. Like you dropped some of the complexity out of the chain just because, you know, at some point, you know, the tech head's going to try to squeeze every little bit of TPS out, you know, every 5 TPS out. So you add in all these layers, but every layer you add in goes back into the developer's work stream, and you extrapolated all that out. Now the thing is just like the Lamden JS is so stripped down now. It can almost just be vanilla JS right now.
That's
it's
good.
Really lightweight. It's super lightweight.
Yeah.
I want to talk. Oh yeah, so we brought that kind of formula to the Chromia devs. The guys that I can't remember the name of it, and I should know the name of it. I feel bad.
Yeah.
It's just been so long. But they had a game on Chromia, and we got in contact with them. Great group of guys. You know, they had a deal with Chromia. They wouldn't tell us exactly what it was, but our pitch to them was, you know, we can help you with all the technical aspects of it. You know, if you make a game on our thing, and I think that we're looking more of a monetary backing, but that's not really the business we want to get into. Like I said, we kind of want to foster your ideas because it takes a lot of effort on our part and a lot of money and a lot of time to take an idea and bring it out and then market it. Right? We learned that with Landing World. To be honest with you, we learned that we have so much to worry about. You just don't need that third wheel kind of hanging on. But if you have somebody who's really interested in your idea and you can just foster them, then they're going to take the idea and they're going to run with it, and that's going to benefit everybody.
Yeah, and just
we're still in contact with them. They still are interested in our tech. Because it's so similar to Chromia, they're even more interested in it. To be honest, they like the block times, and they think that they can work with us. So they're just focused right now on that game and getting it launched. So we're just on the back burner with that.
Yeah, and just to add to what Jeff said, if someone's just interested, like, oh, I'll only do something if it's for monetary value, and you're trying to get that person to increase the adoption of your blockchain, it's almost like an antithesis because they're monetarily driven, and I think people are much more driven by like everyone thinks their idea is the best idea, right? And so if we can just help you take your best idea, we don't have to convince you that's the best idea because you came up with it, right? You'll take that and go and promote it, and we can help foster it in another way that's not just like a monetary transaction, because then there's no skin in the game. There has to be skin in the game from both sides. Like we have an incentive to get you to use our technology because it's a network effect, right? Like one developer brings potentially 100 people on their own or 1,000 people, where we would not be able to do that by ourselves. So like we're incentivized to help you, even if it's just develop it, and even if it's just like a simple application or something. And then for you, we're trying to incentivize it for you so that you feel like this is something that you own. This is something that benefits you in some aspect. You're actually able to create some value for yourself out of it. Um, and that system, I really hope, because like to me, that type of system is really cool. And I hope that a lot of other people feel that too.
Yeah, I agree. Um, there was some questions around: are we launching anything with mainnet? Are we launching? Do we have anything that's launching with mainnet?
In terms
I
of
don't.
what?
What's that?
In terms of what?
Do we have any games launching with mainnet? Do we have any usable products that we're producing that are launching with mainnet? And my focus has been over the last couple of months is trying to create demos that we can just make examples of things. Like we would have loved to have the time to launch Lamden World for mainnet, and honestly, we still don't know when mainnet's coming. We'll get into that later. Hopefully soon, but it could be a month, 2 months. But anyway, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about example
right.
games.
So it would have been great, but then if someone goes to our website or someone tries to figure out how they're going to make something, they don't have anything to look at. So, cart before the horse, right? So, I got the tutorial series, which will show you, and I suggest that you, if you're interested in this stuff, to really take a look at it. Like if you're in the main chat and you're asking questions and you have an idea, what it'll teach you is how to make a smart contract, what is in a smart contract, what a smart contract does, what it stores, how you make a transaction, what is a transaction. It probably answers a lot of your questions about what is blockchain good for or what you can use blockchain for in the first tutorial. And then it'll get into how you can kind of interact with your smart contract, and then the last couple of parts are on how you make a website that interacts with your smart contract. Like it's not small potatoes, and it's only 4 tutorials. I got a couple more parts that will let you take your app and then put it on the actual blockchain. We're waiting for wallet updates to make. We're waiting for Google to push some wallet updates to make those tutorials usable. But in any event, I suggest you take a look at them. But what I'm going to create is just some demos. So we have we call it pixel frames. So there's a big Ethereum push for this project called Pixel Chain, and they look fantastic. They did, great project. Honestly, they're doing great things with Decentraland. But it's a really simple concept. This was actually, I think, early on one of your ideas too. We're going to take it one step further. We're going to make GIFs or little mini movies you can make, and maybe you can make them like an avatar walking or some kind of thing, right? But instead of just like having one pixel board, it'll be 3 or 5. I haven't decided yet. And then, all that will be stored on the blockchain, and you can sell them, trade them. You can use them as your avatar in a wallet. But that's just a simple idea. It's not a game, but it's a simple demo that we can put out there on the website, on the new website, to say, hey, this is an example of something you could make. It's simple, it's easy. Here's the code. Take a look at it. And we have a couple other ones that we're going to make something that makes beats or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
where you can make beats, share beats, sell them, I suppose.
It's like if you guys know like a drum machine, like a Roland 808, where it has the pattern, like you get 16 beats and then you maybe have 8 sounds. Jeff had this idea where you basically tokenize a beat, right? And you kind of plot it all out and it's encoded in the blockchain. And then you can trade that beat or you can combine the beats into like bigger beats or things like that. And it's like, that's a cool idea that, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just all small, little, tiny things, really. Like it shouldn't take too long to make them, but that's really what we're focused on. So for mainnet, we want to just have examples of how to use the technology. That's kind of our focus. Stu, I gotta take a break here. Do you want to talk about? We'll get into like the tech updates. So do you want to get into updates on just like Clove, all that type of stuff?
Sure.
You talk about that for 5 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it. All right. And I can field some questions too if you guys want to jump in on the chat. So, I think one of the questions was, what's up with Clove and Flora and Saffron? And I think that is a good question because as things started morphed, right? First it was like, we're going to have these toolkits, right? And it's going to be like an Ethereum type based toolkit suite. And then it turned into a blockchain and let's try to actually tackle the whole core of the blockchain problem. And now sort of those issues have come back into the fold, right? Like, where I see Flora kind of coming into play is naturally still a smart contracting library. And as more people start developing things, I think we're going to see a repository of smart contracts come out. How we create those smart contracts, there's a whole bunch of different ways, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different patterns. Jeff and I have talked about like, you can have like sort of like a master controller type thing where like there's a piece of code that you put up on the blockchain that takes the storage. Like each smart contract you create has its own isolated storage where basically you send the pointer to the storage unit and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, there's different ways we can do it, right? And so I think it becomes naturally apparent as more people develop smart contracts. And Clove is another example, right? Like as now the mainnet is coming up, one of the things that we're seeing is these really fast block times, right? Like we're around a sub-second block time, and we're a reactive blockchain rather than a proactive blockchain. So like blockchains right now will just mint blocks, right? They'll just keep on minting blocks no matter what. But ours only mints blocks if there's work to be done, which means that your transaction goes in and it gets processed as soon as possible, whether there's other transactions or not, right? There's no mempool or anything like that. Or if there is a mempool, but it's not something that's kind of being like, oh, you got to wait 10 minutes and the block size is like a megabyte, right? It just churns through that as fast as possible like a work queue, which means we can do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And things like Clove, where you're doing atomic swaps, can be settled a lot faster. It also brings in this concept of wrapping, right? I think it'd be really cool to look into wrapping different crypto tokens and crypto assets that are on different chains so that they can settle really fast on Lamden. And then like an atomic swap is a lot slower because it's as fast as the slowest blockchain. So if it's like Bitcoin, it's 10 minutes, right? But with Lamden, if it's a sub 1 second, you could settle and you could have a much more reactive like decentralized exchange or something like that occurring. And yeah, how do you wrap it? Those are kind of the questions we're having now, where before it was this thing doesn't exist. How do we solve it? And so I don't really know exactly in what capacity it will be in. Like I don't think that right now we want to design a whole spec out for it. But what I can say is like Clove is done in terms of like that tech has been done for a long time. It's a question of, okay, plugging it into the wallet or into a separate site. And then can we wrap tokens and Bitcoin and other stuff and then have it settle on Lamden? Can we make a DEX, right? That'd be really cool. And then for Flora, how much collateral do we need, or how much community involvement do we really need to hit a critical mass? Where if it's like an NPM or like a PIP, how many packages did they have initially, right? If it was like 20, right? Cool. Or is it one of those things where it's like a project basis, like you want to make a token, and so you pull a project from GitHub or something, and it has like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and then your smart contract, right? I don't know. So, anyways,
All good?
yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's talk testnet.
Sure.
So we've had testnet there probably, I don't even know, 4 months, 5 months now.
Yeah.
We put it up, we test it, and then we redo it. And we've been going through that kind of iteration for a while now. And every time we do it, it gets up longer and longer. And the general idea is at the point where we don't have to reset it anymore, and it just is kind of performing and it's passing all the tests,
Yeah.
we release it to mainnet. I mean, so the question when mainnet is when testnet, right? So that's really what it comes down to. We will, we're so close, right? Can you explain what you merged in today, because it's pretty big stuff.
Yeah, I merged the upgrade protocol work, so that'll allow us to push upgrades, and not just like, it allows us to do very granular upgrades where like Ethereum has to soft fork all the time, and there's no real clear way that you upgrade Bitcoin. But for us, there's like a clear upgrade path where it's like, all right, you're upgrading, it's part of the governance, and you can you can say this is a contracting upgrade, so we're going to upgrade a feature of the contracting branch, or we're going to upgrade part of the Cilantro branch, right? And then the entire system like pulls the code, hot reloads. It never shuts down. Like you don't have to restart anything. It just basically, because of Python being Python, you can just hot reload stuff, which you want to be careful of. But it allows us to do some pretty crazy stuff. Where we are and why the testnet keeps on getting torn down is only because I keep on breaking it. So it's like I kind of know where the pressure points are, and so if I wanted to keep it up for a week, I just wouldn't push those pressure points, right? And then it would look like it's up for a week, but that's clearly not helpful. So the problems that I was working with recently was masternode joining. So delegates have been stable for a very long time, like joining, leaving, not responding to consensus and things like that. They've been stable for a very long time. Contracting has been stable like for a year and a half. And now it's like masternode joining and then upgrade. So with masternode joining, I was just running into like wacky things like some syncing issues, and I was able to fix those and stuff like that. So master nodes were always supposed to be these stable nodes. So I'll answer that witness thing in a question. So I wasn't expecting them to get torn down, but as I was doing these test cases, like what if it gets torn down or what if it fails consensus, I started to find these bugs, luckily. So not a big deal because I was able to fix them. And now it's merging in the upgrades. I'll probably still want to play around with tearing down master nodes and bringing them back up, just to make sure that all my fixes worked. Blasting it, I've been blasting it as well. Like just shooting a whole bunch of transactions at it. It's able to, like, if the delegates do get out of sync or they do mess up consensus, it can recover, which is really cool. So like we're seeing things where it does hiccup because it's a decentralized network, it still resolves and it still maintains everything. So those are a lot of the problems, right? Like 5 computers on the internet all trying to do the same thing and coordinate. There's a lot of like communication stuff that can go wrong, and it's flipping, it's happening. So we'll get there. For witnesses is an interesting thing because when we decided to like let's put the witness feature on hold was because the communication, it was just an added communication cost, and we weren't seeing any benefits. So the downside to that is that the number of potential nodes in the network is lower, is reduced. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of how we can increase the number of participants so that anyone who wants to be a node could be a node. Because right now we have the issue where the more nodes, the slower the network becomes, and that's true of any blockchain, and the fewer rewards get distributed. So we might have an issue where people might not vote in nodes because they want to be rewarded, right? And so it kind of that's a blessing and a curse because the network stays as concise as it needs to be, so it doesn't need to be bloated. But then also, if you need more decentralization, it might be an issue. So what I kind of want to look at is either we introduce the witnesses. I'm not sure in what capacity again, or I'm looking at there's this project called Boinc, BOINC, and it's used for grid computing. So like folding at home, or when COVID's still around, but they had a grid computing project where you could do protein folding work or something to find corona vaccines. They have a system that I kind of want to try to apply where you could have infinite delegates and infinite master nodes, and then only a subquorum of each of those would send like a block, right? So like I don't know, like if there's 30, three of those master nodes each take turns sending to three other delegates, and those three delegates do the work, and it's all kind of like coordinated and overlapped in like a stochastic manner, so you can't like have any collusion or things like that. That would be the Lamden 2, I guess, Lamden 2.0 to F's 2.0. That's kind of what I want to see, and that would be like a really, really dope like second version. So we'll see. How detrimental to performance are the added nodes? It's not performance actually; it's latency. So like it's just communication costs. So communication is exponential because we're doing like multicasts, right? So like one master node has to go to all the delegates, right? So that means that if there's 6 master nodes, that's 6 times however many delegates messages out, and then all those delegates wait for all those master nodes to send in their messages, and then if they don't get one, what do they do, and things like that. So yeah, it's not a big issue because all communication systems kind of suffer this problem, but it's one of those things where like if that is an aspect of the system, are people going to potentially exploit it? I don't know. Sure, but it's not anything that's going to have a negative performance impact.
Yeah, and decentralization for the sake of decentralization, we've had this conversation. You actually brought me over to the other side. Is silly, right? Someone was asking, we had a question about why are we pushing right now for just West Coast nodes? There's again, it's a communication latency, and we want this network to be as fast as possible. We don't need to own all the nodes, but we can suggest as the current node owners that we would like West Coast nodes because that would mean the network would be as fast as possible, right? You can have Lamden owns three nodes, and who else? Community owns 3 other nodes, and that's fairly decentralized. It's 50-50. But the best way to actually upgrade the network is to upgrade the node. Like you pay for a better VPS, right? More cores, better CPU, all this stuff. That's actually going to have more benefit to the network than just adding another node. Because you add another node, you add more latency. So it really is fine-tuning between, making it decentralized, so that Lamden doesn't control the network. There's not a complete control, but also not just for the sake of having a bunch of nodes, having a bunch of participants at the detriment of the, it's supposed to be a fast blockchain. So you don't want to just have at the detriment of the speed, and it becomes unusable. And you got a lot of decentralized nodes, sure, but at what cost, right? So it's it's just a fine line is really the question. We just wanted to start West Coast and then branch out maybe farther east, just to start off so we can maintain the variables and then we'll expand out as we see fit. That's just the small answer to that.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to you, Jeff, um, the also it's one of those things where do we like right now our block times are like 250 milliseconds to 400 milliseconds because of how close they are together. Is that going to be a feature that people care about more than if it's even if one of the nodes is in New York City, it's like 1 second to like 2 seconds, right? I don't know, and that's something that the community on the community, like the international version, we have to decide. Because at the end of the day, it's a community version. So if everyone's like, well, decentralization is more important, okay, fine, right? Like that's the whole point of the governance. Um, but who knows? And also, there's things that we can add to the protocol to make the latency less of an issue. Like there's optimizations and stuff. You know, like this is the first version. We can definitely add some things to make it less of an issue, and then we can increase the decentralization, the geographic decentralization as we move forward. So, yeah.
Right. Um, so, testnet's going well. It really is. It's fast. I like using it. It's a little bit up and down, but it's the idea is to get it stable and up, and then it becomes mainnet. So, if you're interested in when mainnet, pay close attention to the node group. I don't know if you can ask someone for an invite link and pay close attention in there and see how the testnet's going.
Yeah, in case you're not familiar to what Jeff is referring to, we are currently working with actual community members to integrate them in the test network, and we have been this whole time. So, like, they're part of the active testing process, and they're actively part of the consensus. So this isn't something where we're running it and controlling it. Yeah, like Twisted Spine says, like a lot of people have put in a lot of work and a lot of hours into kind of our antics of tearing it down and bringing it back up and having to re-register delegates and getting voted back into the quorum, and it's like this whole thing. So yeah, thanks to them, absolutely. But it's good, man. Yeah, I feel pretty satisfied with where we're at. Yeah.
Good. We had some questions around what are we going to provide developers when we release mainnet. So we've hired a guy to get our documentation in order, and part of that is creating a document website that'll have everything we need to know about the wallet, everything we need to know about creating an app, how do you use like Lamden.js, how do you use the wallet to create a D app, how do you start a node, all the stuff that maybe people have technical questions about, like frequently asked questions stuff, as well as all the APIs for all the stuff that we made. It'll be in one nice Lamden site that developers can go to and hopefully get a lot of information from. And some tutorials as well, hopefully.
Yeah, something too is that we're looking for an actual marketing firm, which is cool. So now that we have this US compliant chain, we can run a real marketing campaign where you're seeing a lot of these other crypto companies not being able to do so because what are they going to do, right? Like we can just pipe people through, which is nice. So part of what a marketing firm is going to give us is a lot of content, and one of the things that a lot of them have been talking about, like we're basically just getting proposals and talking to them right now. So, but with full intents to retaining one and going through a full website redo, content market strategy, all of that stuff, is that they would either like tell us to create Udemy courses, which you and I, Jeff, have wanted to do anyways, and sort of like creating as much content as possible to promote what we're doing and get out there, that hopefully that also is part of the developer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. So yeah. So on that, will mainnet be a release date with a time frame, or will it be a drop in the main chat?
I don't know. How do you think it's gonna go?
What would you say is the biggest draw for our tech?
I think initially it's going to be the ease, and then sort of those smaller things like how fast it is going to become more apparent because you can't really compete on that anymore. Well, I don't think you should have competed on that at all. But a lot of projects were like 1 million TPS and blah, 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 blah. It's this fast. Those things don't really matter unless you're using it and actually like trying to do something with it. And so once people can feel that after developing something, they'll be like, oh, this is sweet. But the initial draw is going to be the smart contracts, 100%. And I think the fees are way, way, way lower than Ethereum, and it doesn't get clogged. That's another thing, is that ours doesn't get clogged because there's no gas price. It's a fixed gas price. The network can vote on what that fixed fee is to essentially make sure it doesn't inflate with the the floating asset, but it's still it doesn't get clogged, which is nice. So I think a lot of those issues that people are seeing too with like what's going on right now with Ethereum, and when they do have problems with it being clogged, they're gonna say, oh, what? It's the small stuff, right? It's the small things that I don't think we're really right now we're not making apparent because we're not marketing on it, that maybe we should make it more apparent to these marketers that it's a big deal. But those are the things that I think people are really going to like.
That goes into the next question. Actually, was how did we address Ethereum's scaling issues? That's what's on everyone's mind these days.
Just their scaling issues in general?
Yeah, it's like the more it's used, the worse it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like that's the nature of their own doing. Like they have a fixed block size and they have a fixed block time. I don't know much about their proof of stake system. I don't really understand the beacon chain. I mean, I get it, but I don't necessarily buy into it a lot. But who knows? I mean, I'll just say what Ethereum people are saying is that like whatever we say, oh, Ethereum isn't going to scale, they say, well, Ethereum 2 is coming out. Okay. But I think it's more than that. We obviously fix a lot of those scaling issues, and then things such as not knowing how much a transaction is going to cost is not going to be a problem anymore. Or not knowing how to sign a transaction because you have to import some library that has weird design ideologies that you have to adhere to. It's not going to be a problem. Those things you can compete on. So while we're competing on scaling, that's not the only thing. Because if we were only competing on that, then it'd be one of those things where it's like, well, Ethereum 2.0, and then you wouldn't have anything to say. So it's much more than just scaling. That being said, I think we do scale better than Ethereum, and in a more meaningful way than Ethereum. So that's cool. But it is supposed to be like a full experience that's better, not just like one aspect or one thing.
Right, I agree. I'm gonna skip over some of this stuff here. Well, maybe not. So let's talk about nodes. So we talked a little bit about nodes, but people are kind of interested in taking part in nodes. Like you said, increased participation in nodes, but like at like a smaller level. And I'm gonna say what I think about this, and other people are gonna like it, and I apologize for that right away. But the network needs to be run by people who want to run it. Right? It needs to be run. It's a software. It needs to be maintained, and it needs to have people that know how to do that. And those people should be rewarded for that because it will take time and it will take um, uh, a VPS with a certain hardware spec, and it's got to be kept up and all that kind of stuff. And there will be communication between other nodes, actual real life communication. Those people need to be, and the rewards are kind of, need to be split around. So those are the people that should be running nodes, and those are the people that should be rewarded for doing that. Now, Stu, what's your? I know you threw out the other day staking and this type of stuff, and you were just trying to gauge interest in that. But what's your thought on participation from anybody in the network?
I think when people hear masternode, they probably think what a masternode, like if you're scrolling on Bitcoin Talk for just some cool new altcoins to get into because you have some free time and you want to kind of do something. Like I think a lot of people are kind of approaching our system like that, but like Jeff said, it's much more because it's much more integral. Like this is supposed to be a project with a whole bunch of developers who really care about it together, maintaining it. And so that does require real life coordination, right? Like there is voting mechanisms to make sure certain things, let's say, happen. Like the reward distribution on who gets how many rewards can be voted on by consensus, and then it automatically gets updated. Or like the upgrade protocol, if new software needs to be updated, like you have to be online and in the know of where the software is to then participate in that upgrade. And if your node has an issue, you need to be able to rectify that pretty quickly. And so it's not necessarily you have to be on call, but you should be incentivized to go and fix that thing, right? And so that's how the system's set up. If you're looking for staking, yeah, I just gauged this interest because I saw that people were probably thinking about masternodes from that staking perspective where they're like, oh, there's inflation in the cryptocurrency, and that inflation goes to people who stake, right? Unfortunately, we don't have inflation, so that's not possible. We have deflation, which means that at a minimum 1% of the transaction fees get destroyed, which is a kind of like a little known feature that we haven't really documented, but that's the case. So now the case is whether or not we like deflation or inflation as a cryptocurrency. I personally like deflation a lot more, and I like destructive stuff. I think that whole concept is not really explored. And then the network can vote on it, right? Like the network could vote 100% burn or deflation, right, of all transaction fees if they want, or if the community at large wants. I don't know if that fixes the issue, but when it comes to traditional, like anything here is traditional, staking, we don't have it right now, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't implement it if there was a demand.
Or if we could find an interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, you put out a blog a couple months ago on Lombardier. Was it Lombardier?
Yeah. Lombardi.
Do you have any more thoughts on that? People are kind of looking for like an update on that. I know it was just kind of a think piece, but
yeah, that was cool. I like that because that's kind of like this. I don't know. I gave Alex the MakerDAO paper, and he's like a hardcore finance guy, and I think I always give him headaches because DeFi and RealFi are polar opposites. Like he pulls his hair out. So it's really cool from a tech aspect because it automates so much stuff, and a lot of these things that classical finance is built on can be created in like a completely programmatical way. But there's some irony to how it's being implemented right now. Like with MakerDAO, the irony was that there's no counterparty except the protocol itself, which means that if someone's going to bite the bullet, it's going to be like a catastrophic sort of protocol collapse. Which, I mean, okay. What we decided was just like, okay, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Let's just look at how people had done it. And we kind of took like the MakerDAO system it's just based off of like you know, it's basically like an equity line of credit, right? Like you put up some Ethereum, and then the protocol mints you some DAI, like a lesser amount of DAI, which is stable because it's backed by like 2 times as much Ethereum than it's worth. In theory, is how it's supposed to work. Sometimes it fails, and it has failed before. But our whole thing was like, all right, that's cool. But usually how that works in the real world is that you have an actual person analyzing the risk on the other side. So what Alex said is that no bank is going to actually lend out money, like United States dollars, at the rate that MakerDAO is because of the inherent volatility of Ethereum. So the system itself is not stable. And also sometimes the system has to be analyzed, and it might not be safe to loan out money. So why are we even having the protocol loan out money? Why don't we just have it help facilitate borrowers and lenders? And it can be of whatever we want, and then it can be a complete marketplace. Like, why is MakerDAO the only place that is giving you a DAI rate? Like, why not have a riskier lender who gives you a better rate, right? There should be a competition for it. But right now it's like decentralization, but decentralized so that everybody uses my application and no other application. Whereas I think what's cooler is that small time people can build up themselves, right? They can be a lender, and they can use this blockchain to give out collateralized loans of tokens, or they can wrap like stock tokens, or I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things. The way that I wrote that was like tokenize stuff, put it up as collateral, and get other tokenized stuff back. And then based on some rules, that loan can liquidate itself or not, right? Based on like oracles or something. And then if you just have the platform for people to do that, I think it's way cooler that you have 1,000 different loaners, and they all kind of compete for your business rather than just one sort of like, I don't know, cold protocol, you know?
Yep. I don't know a lot. I think people assume I know more about crypto stuff than I actually do. I'll admit it. I don't know a whole lot about exchanges, and I don't know a whole lot about DeFi. So I don't have a lot of input on the topic. But CryptoSped gave us a lot of thought-out questions. So I'm going to hit you with these questions, okay?
Okay.
All DeFi related. Have you put any thought towards DeFi applications for Lamden, aside from the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, well, you can clone any of them, right? So if there's like if someone wanted to clone MakerDAO and just make it TauDAO or something, I don't know, they could. They could. They could just make a different DAI and a different collateralization rate of how much Tau to DAI. Yeah, TauDAO. And you could do it, right? And you could be the person who runs TauDAO. I don't really want to run TauDAO, right? Which is fine, but that's the whole point. Yeah. And we can copy all of those, is what I'm saying. Like the ways that they work, those protocols are just copied off of a way that a bank loans stuff out, pretty much. Just it's all kind of tokenized and things like that. We can certainly implement those. I think when it comes to like more interesting stuff, it would be like, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of really like exotic derivatives, like having some, like if you guys understand CDOs or things like that, where you have a whole bunch of loans and then they're like tranched together in different ways, which create derivatives out of them. It's like this inherently really complex structure, which is almost like an engineering problem. And if you can vote on all of those tranches and all those deep finance things and who gets what tranches and who's in what risk category, and that can all be on the blockchain, not only would it execute on itself like pretty, yeah, pretty. I don't know if it'd be efficiently, but it'd be right there. It would execute, and people would get what they would want. Um, I think you would also have the entire transaction log, so then it would be completely verified. Like weird stuff like that, I think would be really cool. Or what did AIG do? AIG did credit default swaps, I think, which is I don't remember, but they were bankrupt now. But basically, the idea where it was an insurance policy, yeah, um, it was an insurance policy against something where they said you pay us a little bit of money in case this loan fails, and we basically bet that it won't fail, right? And there's a way that you can tokenize that, but then require that. The problem with AIG is that they went bankrupt because they said, yeah, we got your $1 billion loan for like a AAA bond. Yeah, sure, we'll back that up. Just give us 1% extra insurance. And in the back, they're like, we don't have the cash. We don't have $1 billion in cash, but that thing's AAA, so we're not like it's not going to fail. And then it did fail, and they didn't have the money, and then it blew up, right? And so on blockchain, you can verify that somebody actually has that because you can lock that shit up, and then you know it could be cool and transparent. So I don't know how that works in terms of how it gets implemented, but what I care more about is that like ordinary people do it because and there's like a dispersed competitive landscape of all of that versus like one massive firm that everyone goes to, because when that fails, then everything fails. And I think that's the problem of like modern finance and sort of this whole, I don't know, like people, I think society or whatever, like businesses consolidate and they aren't breaking up enough. And so like when they consolidate and then they kind of become stiff in how they organize, when something shifts, the whole thing collapses, and then all the businesses relying on that business collapse as well. And it's not like a very safe economic situation. So anyways.
Similar to Lamden Games Chat, does it make sense to set up a community group dedicated to Lamden DeFi use cases and applications? I can take that. I mean,
sure.
The Lamden Games Chat is not that active right now, and I wish it would be more active. But we don't think we need to set up another group for another thing. I think we have a lot of groups on the go right now. But that being said, if you think it's something that you're really interested in, you could set up a group. We'll come in. And your next question is around assuming a community member has the business case and functional design for a DeFi. Is it DeFi?
I think it's DeFi.
For a DeFi-based application on Lamden, how would Lamden help make this a reality?
Yeah.
How do you see the traditional ICO STO model working with Lamden? Like, so it sounds like crypto study. You're pretty interested in this stuff. You can create a community around it. Absolutely. I don't think I need to be running another community. But Stu, what do you think of this? If someone wanted to create, my personal opinion is I would like more people to create things on Lamden than are currently, and I would like us to not be involved so heavily in these things. A lot of questions we got around, are we going to create this? Are we going to create that? And my response to those would be, I would love it if somebody created those things on Lamden. But Stu, what's your opinion?
Yeah, it's not that we are not heavily involved. It's that we're integral to it occurring. Like, we should help facilitate it, but we want you to own it, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, I have this great idea, but you need to do it for it to be done. It's more like, okay, what can you do? Oh, I can do X, Y, and Z. Well, we can help you with, like, the best thing that we can help you with is developing the smart contract, because we know the smart contracting system, so we could develop it a lot faster than you can, because you have to learn it. Not to say that it's hard to learn, but it's just a fact of like the people who wrote it and use it every day are going to write it for you. It's going to save you a lot of time. Like, that's the most effective way that we can help you. And then when it comes to what you need to do, it would probably be more the front end stuff and the, making it your own and taking lead on owning it.
Mark.
Marketing, sure. I mean, it's your thing, right? It's your thing. Like, no one else is going to care about your thing more than you, right? So it's something that you have to take charge of, and we're here to help facilitate it because, like we said before, there's a vested interest in us helping you, and so if we can help you, that's great. But we can't own your thing at the same time.
Very well said.
Thank you.
I was dropping some stuff in main chat yesterday just about my thoughts on what I would think an exchange would look like if we did one. But we got a lot of questions around Lamdex. So people are interested in creating a place to use their TAO that has accessibility. And there's a big worry that there's going to be no accessibility. So
Yeah.
I'm curious of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the thing is that we do have software to allow this so that you can always enter the ecosystem from the ERC20 token. That's never an issue. And so you don't need to feel like compelled in any regard. That being said, one of the things we do want to do, and this is also kind of lends itself to, as long as we completely isolate the U.S. market and we do not screw around in the U.S. market, we can talk about these things and it's cool. It's fine. It's at least more fine than us trying to do this weird tightrope walk. So let's talk about it. I think that if a protocol can be created, that whether it's wrapping tokens or something, even just having a DEX on Lamden would be great. And Jeff and I were kind of spitballing. The coolest DEX would just be wrapped Ether into Lamden on a DEX. And I think that would do two things. That would kind of give this wrapped Ether concept, and we could open source it, we could do whatever. And then the DEX aspect, and that's almost like a DeFi application. So that could start feeding into this DeFi thing that people really like. And yeah, that's kind of like, I think that DEXs are going to be the thing next, and I think that NFTs are going to be the thing next. So how can we kind of get ahead of the curve there?
I want to say we don't currently have anything on our internal roadmap as far as that goes, though, right? So, but we are definitely looking now. Now that the handcuffs are off a little bit, we are definitely looking for ways for people to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So we're near the end of this thing, Stu.
All right.
Are we patenting anything? Yes, no.
Are we patenting anything? No. I mean, if we do, it'd be like trademarking marketing terms or something like that. I don't think it would be anything like that.
Oh, one from the Telegram room here. How can Lamden support development on the international version alongside the US version?
Sure. So it depends what you want to do, right? And so if you want value to transact, then the international version is going to be a lot better for you. If you want to develop it because you have more of a fun application, you want to get into blockchain, you're probably going to want to use the US version. The whole reason why we had to essentially castrate the US version is because money transmission is a big deal, and anything that construes as money transmission in the US is a big deal. And unfortunately, the way that they look at fintech right now is almost in a puritanical way where they're very strict about it, which is fine, right? We can't do anything about that. But what that means is that we've had to make some modifications. You can't do so much. So if you kind of want to do those things, you're just not going to do it on the US version. It's just not going to be the ideal place. Now, if you have a game that you make on one of the chains and you want to port it over, they work exactly the same. So you just port it over. That's not an issue. So if you amass users on one and you kind of test it on one and you want to put it on another, that's not a problem. It's just that the value transfer, and when people talk about that, like, well, what is cryptocurrency moving moving like this crypto stuff around. That's kind of a no-no when it comes to U.S. markets. So that's the differentiation.
I think that's it. Is there any more questions from the chat or the?
Toby said, "How do you differentiate?" Oh, we have two. How do you differentiate between U.S. market and the ex-U.S. market? Are you asking people for IPs when fielding requests? Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We can sell credits to people in the U.S. We can't sell crypto to people in the U.S. So that's pretty much the biggest gate, right? That's it. So essentially, we can't do any marketing and things like that. But you know, it is what it is. We can market outside the U.S. when it comes to the international version, and we can educate people on what the international version is. But we definitely can't be as open with it. In terms of like IP blocking, it's not. I don't think it's one of those things where we have to IP block if you're going to just use the thing. And I think we would just expect a lot of the risk to be. I don't know. I don't know right now if we have.
I think that it's more simplistic than that. Like it's, the website, if you're in the US and you get the website, you're going to get a different website than someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And, as far as the international version goes, it's, any exchange we deal with is going to KYC out the US people. And, that should be enough, that to satisfy the requirements, right? So it's nothing crazy. We're not IP blocking from the chain or anything like that or whatever. It's a little more simplistic, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
Once we go mainnet, can you estimate timeline for swapping and possible liquidity solutions for the decentralized Tau version?
Well, you did the swap app, and that's done, right?
How long are we running the swap app?
How long are we running the swap app? I think that we also talked to we talked to lawyers about this, and it seems to be that you run it for like a year or something. It has to be one of those things where we run it for a reasonable amount of time, and that's what we're obligated to, but we can run it as long as we want. So that being said, I would say okay, a year, right? A year of actively managing it. And then if somebody doesn't come in after a year and we, whether we take the server down or the support's lacking for that, we have some sort of facility where people can be like, hey, look, I want to do this thing. Can you guys help me switch over? And we're like, yeah, okay, sure. So that, yeah.
There's a question about the team. Do you want to field that one or no?
Yeah, sure. So Twisted Spine says he'd like to know if Tejas is still on the team, and if not, did Tejas and Ragu leave on good terms? Tejas isn't on the team anymore. So he moved on a few months ago. And yeah, it's always on good terms. I mean, these are not conversations I think anyone wants to have, but it's usually just something isn't working out when it comes to expectations or when it comes to the way people are thinking. I think one of the problems that I had was if you get cryptocurrency, it's easy to get, and your expectations of what people should be doing are pretty clear. So with me and Jeff, we work together really well because he knows crypto. But a lot of these people that were hired originally got into crypto and wanted to work at a crypto place because they heard it was cool. And so a lot of the problems we had were they would want to do things in a more enterprisey way. And so, whatever. That being said, yeah, it's always on good terms, and it is what it is. So yeah. And then we know you can't comment on exchange talk, but are there current ongoing conversations leading up to the mainnet launch that look encouraging? Doesn't have to be specific. Well, I think you answered your own question, unfortunately, which is I don't think that we could talk about stuff like that explicitly, but I think as explicit as we can get would be if we wanted to look at a DEX or something, or provide the community with something like that. I still don't know. I feel like all of that stuff is very ham-fisted, and I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to really be kind of the guy who comes out like, yeah, we're going to be doing this, because I think it's kind of cheap, and it kind of puts it, I don't know. It's not really what it's about, but yeah. Yeah. Lambdex is cool. We're thinking about it. It's not hard to do a Dex. We're kind of wondering if we can do a Dex better. So like having automatic market buys and things like that, and automatic and like an actual order book, and like an ordered book and stuff. That'd be cool. But yeah. Anything else, Joe? Yeah. How you doing over there?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Cool.
It's only 9.
Well, I think that the community appreciates you doing this, so
yeah.
Thank you. I know I do. And yeah, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, take it easy, okay?
You too. See you later, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Bye, everybody.
I hope you recorded.
I did. All right. See ya.